Good morning. My name is Leah Amstutz, the Director in the Office of Career Technical Education, and I'm excited to be here this morning to provide an update on the behalf of the Office of Career Technical Education. Just to go through a few business items for this morning's presentation is that this is being held as a live event due to the number of attendees that registered for the event. Because it is a live event in Teams, the ability for you to ask questions will be through the Q&A icon. We have staff that will be monitoring the Q&A icon throughout my presentation, and we'll then be answering or asking those questions at the end of the presentation. If we have questions that we aren't able to get through during this presentation, we will ensure to follow up with written communication to those individuals. I also would like to remind everyone that this is going to be a recorded event as well. And the goal is that if we can get a high quality recording, that we will be able to post this for all stakeholders to access on their own. Just to go through the agenda for today, we'll do a welcome on behalf of the Office of Career Technical Education and touch base then on the Career Technical Education Brown Bag Lunch series that we have worked collaboratively with the field to create. Talk a little bit about the Reset and Restart Education Planning Guide, as well as some of the topics that you'll see in our Brown Bag series, work-based learning, data and accountability, as well as the quality program review, the program of study, and capstone, and then we'll end with a few updates on the CT26 application process. Just to remember, our office continues to not only work at implementing the Perkins 5 state plan, but also ensuring that we have alignment to Ohio's overall strategic plan for education, which is Each Child, Our Future. And so we often go to this diagram to ensure that when we're looking at the work and projects that we're doing with the field in relation to career technical education, that we're meeting the overall expectation of where we want the education system in Ohio to basically get to from that standpoint. The Office of Career Technical Education truly wants to welcome you back to school.
Damn. It's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. We've come a long way from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again. Damn, who knew? All the planes we flew, good things we've been through, that I'll be standing right here talking to you about another path. I know we love to hit the road and laugh, but something told me that it wouldn't last. Had to switch up, look at things different, see the bigger picture. Those were the days, hard work forever pays. Now I see you in a better place. How can we not talk about family when family's all that we got? Everything I went through, you were standing there by my side, and now you gon' be with me for the last ride. It's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. We've come a long way from where we began. You know we started. I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again.
So we would just again like to welcome you back to the school year. We know that definitely the last 6 months has been trying for everyone. And I know many of you are back in school 5 days a week and implementing the safety measures from the Restart and Reset Educational Planning Guide and working with students. And just remember, the Office of Career Technical Education, we're here to support you. We still are in a teleworking environment from that standpoint. And so just be conscious of that, if you need to get a hold of us, email is truly probably the best way to get a hold of us. And we are trying to be as responsive as possible in providing technical assistance to the field. So again, thank you for all the hard work that you have done to get students back in the classroom this fall, and we'll continue to work together moving forward. And just a reminder, the Reset and Restart Planning Guide, as many of you have already probably dove into that, we worked with an external work group of CTE folks to really put a resource guide specific to career technical education. So if you haven't got to that webpage and seen that resource, please do, because we know there are some unique parts of the career technical education delivery system that are not maybe necessarily what you traditionally see in a K-12 setting. And so this resource guide for CTE is really to provide guidance from those unique pieces like work-based learning, simulated learning environments where community customers are coming in to be served in a real world setting. And so we tried to bring in as much industry sector guidance into that guidance document, as well as provide guidance to still provide the opportunity for our career technical education students to engage in those really relevant pieces of their program, like work-based learning, the simulated work environment, career technical student organizations, and those type of things. So again, if you haven't visited that webpage, please do so. In relation to the Career Technical Education Brown Bag series, we worked this fall with Okta, and because as many of you know, Governor DeWine came out in August and basically said all state employees would be teleworking until January 1st. That really limits our ability to attend anything face-to-face from a function standpoint until then. And so we know that Okta had to cancel a lot because of our inability to attend that conference. And so we worked with them as well as other folks to design this Brown Bag series that really is going to focus on 6 weeks of diving into the topics that we've had the most questions about in the last month and a half. So next week, to kick off the Brown Bag series, will be the topic of work-based learning. That's the one that we've probably gotten the most questions about. As many of you know, that is one of our new federal indicators for quality programs with as part of our state Perkins plan, as we went through stakeholder engagement in developing that state Perkins plan. When that work group, the data and accountability work group, worked on work-based learning, they really wanted to ensure that we had alignment of systems. And so the definition that you see on the screen that's in the data and accountability guidebook is in line with graduation requirements from that standpoint. We heard that we needed to ensure that there was enough flexibility for students to get different experiences to be able to accumulate those hours over those multiple experiences. And so these 6 categories were developed to meet the work-based learning definition that, again, will allow flexibility for students to engage in different types of learning, depending on the part of the state they are in, as well as their program. And so if you are really interested in diving in more to the work-based learning conversation, attend next week's Brown Bag to get a little bit more information. In regards to Perkins 5 data and accountability, I'm pleased to announce that our state plan has been approved as part of the Ohio's combined WIOA plan from that standpoint. And so Our staff has worked incredible, a lot of time they have put in to develop some resources to help guide through the implementations of Perkins 5. And so we've updated our data and accountability webpage to have several resources on there. We have a guidebook. We have a matrix that helps kind of go through some different scenarios for concentrator reporting because with the concentrator definition, basically being a student that has completed 2 courses. And so there's a lot of resources there. And again, I think what you're going to see throughout the entire state plan, as well as the data and accountability work, is that there's an equity focus through all of that. And as you think about the timeline in which Perkins 5 will begin to show up in your data measures from that standpoint, the report card that was just released this past, actually last week, that report card actually contained a majority of the Perkins 4 data. And so Perkins 5 data will not actually be in the state report card until September of 2021. And then the quality program review, the data for Perkins 5 would be in November of 2021. And then we are required to report all of the federal performance indicators, which includes the new one with work-based learning, and then the performance index for the academics, as well as non-trad and graduation, December of 2021. So as you can see, that is the timeline as of now. If anything would change on the state or federal side from an accountability side, we will let you know, but this is the timeline that we are working with for the implementation of the Perkins 5 indicators. As we look at the quality program review, and this would be the 3rd week of the Brown Bag series in terms of there's a session that's going to dive a lot deeper into it, but just thinking about the overall program review, we will be aligning that program to Perkins 5. So the new concentrator definition, as well as there will be new measures within the quality program review, specifically the work-based learning measure will come in. And because of the transition to Perkins 5, we assembled an external work group to kind of talk through and reflect on the quality program review over the past several years, and then think about where does it need to move forward with the implementation of Perkins 5, and what did we learn, from the past. And so with that work group, we really looked at kind of an overhaul, I would say, of the quality program review moving forward. And so just to kind of give you a timeline of what to expect is that, as I said, the report card that was presented just last week had a majority of the Perkins 4 data included in it. And so our FY20 quality program review data that will be uploaded into the quality program review system in November of 2020, that will still be Perkins 4 data and thresholds. And because of it still being really the last piece of Perkins 4, we will hold harmless for all measures for this year from that standpoint. And again, we have more information about this hold harmless piece and a timeline on our quality program review webpage that was posted this morning, as well as our data and accountability webpage that you can look at. And then our staff will go more in depth on these things within the 1-hour session. Then the other thing to think about is for FY21, this will be November of 2021. This will be the first time that the QPR will basically integrate the Perkins 5 measures and thresholds. So work-based learning in November of 2021 will replace technical skill participation. And this also will be a hold harmless year for the measures. And so what we mean by that, if a district does not meet compliance in these 2 years, it won't count against you. However, if you're basically able to meet the measures in one of these 2 years, then you would be able to restart the cycle starting in FY22. And again, we have more information on that resource that has been posted this morning on the quality program review page, as well as the data and accountability page. Also tune in to the staff's presentation as they will dive deeper into it. The fourth week will focus on the program of study in Capstone, and really I think as we have our state plan approved and as we have transitioned into some of the EMIS reports that have been produced through with some of the new Perkins 5 data and accountability business roles. We've gotten some questions on the design of program of studies in the Capstone course. And so we'll spend an hour focusing and reviewing on the requirements of a program of study based on Perkins 5 updates, as well as designing a program of study. And in that design of the program of study, the use of the Capstone course and what the purpose of the Capstone course is and how it can be utilized at the end of a program of study to provide stretch for the students in that program of study. CT26 applications, it's hard to believe that we have had the system up and going now for 5 years. And so we are at the point where we will start renewing the first set of applications that were basically created and submitted and approved in that system. And so the fifth week, the CT26 presentation will focus on that renewal process within the CT26 system and how that will work from that standpoint. And then also last year, as part of the Perkins 5 work, we did add a tab that basically included labor market data that we get from Jobs and Family Services. And so that data will be updated when the system opens in November with the most current labor market data, and that will be part of the renewal process moving forward. So again, that fifth week, this session will dive deeper into some of the updates with the CT26 application. But please note that it is the first year that we will actually be renewing the first set of applications within the system. As many of you know, we had several equity initiatives that we started as part of our transition plan for Perkins 5 and then continued that through last year as we completed our approved state Perkins plan. And just to give you an update, Becky Krantz, who is our program administrator for all of our equity initiatives, she has worked with the field to create the Equity Ambassador Program, which really allows an individual for every CTPD to nominate someone to be an equity ambassador that they are have the ability to get trained free to the CTPD through our partnership with NAEP. And it's kind of the train the trainee model where the ambassador will be able to get a lot of resources and techniques to then go back and train the staff within the CTPD. We still have a handful of CTPDs that have not signed up for this initiative, so please reach out to Becky to get your individual signed up. Also, our goal is that we wanted to do face-to-face equity labs, but I think we're going to have to do virtual labs. And so our plan is to do those this winter. And again, we'll be building on the equity lab that we had last fall. And then again, don't forget, last year we were able to award $1.4 million in equity grants to basically improve gaps in career technical education. And we will have that award. We will have another round of grants available this spring. So again, you can begin thinking about applying for one of these grants from that standpoint, and you can reach out to Becky to get more more information about those. In regards to industry credentials, I would highly recommend that you go and visit that website if you have not lately. We have updated the application process for industry credentials to better meet the needs of business and industry as well as our stakeholders from that standpoint. And so there's an updated application, and then instead of just having an application cycle once a year, we'll be doing it on a quarterly basis. Again, this is to better meet the needs of our stakeholders. And so the dates, you can see the application windows are on this webpage along with the application. Along with the quarterly process, we'll be using a little bit different process and reviewing the applications we get. We're really diving into data and research behind each of the industry credentials. We're using Burning Glass data that really is a national database that has really robust data when it comes to industry credentials. We'll also be looking at alignment to the career technical field content standards. We'll be surveying industry professionals, and then also the final approval endpoints will be by a committee from that standpoint. And so this process actually in this, the first window has just closed and we're working through this process right now. Patty Gooseman is our program administrator for industry credentials. And so you'll find her contact information on the industry credential web pages. So if you have any questions, please reach out to Patty. The next piece is we are still working through our standards and assessment revision processes, even with the interruption that we've had a little bit in with COVID from that standpoint. But this year, in terms of updating web exams, we had a handful that we need to finish up with construction. And then we'll be writing to several of the health courses. And so again, it's really important that you promote this with your educators and allow them to engage in this item writing from that standpoint. We are going to be able to provide a virtual means for this work to be done this year. I think that will make it easier for people to be able to attend and participate in this. So again, please have your teachers or yourself reach out to Fritz or Matt to get signed up for item writing for these areas. Right now, we're currently working through the industry panels and revisions with the transportation standards. And so we'll look at updating the transportation web exams next school year. And then the web exam calendar, we received a lot of feedback when the calendar first came out in August, where we had the pre-testing window closing basically in September. And so we worked with SEAT and we were able to extend that. So there will be a users workshop on October 9th. And then the fall pre-testing window will close October 16th. And then the post-testing window will be November 2nd. And then the winter pre-testing window will basically open January 4th. Again, the link web exam has a lot of resources and their calendar updated, but we just wanted to share those updated dates from that standpoint. Well, that concludes my official presentation. And again, the goal is that we wanted to touch kind of on the broad topics to set up the next 5 to 6 weeks with the CTE Brown Bag series, where we're going to dive into these topics a little bit deeper. And as part of these Brown Bag series, we're going to be creating some resource videos that we will be posting on a resource page within our CTE webpage at the department, so that these resource videos are accessible by the CTE education community on a regular basis. And the resource videos are going to be around some of those key pieces of Perkins 5 and where we've gotten a lot of questions on, to hopefully be a resource that you'll be able to go to and kind of get quick answers from that standpoint. And so all of these sessions will be built up with some intro, the playing of the resource video, some further detail, and then provide Q&A during those times. So again, if you have the opportunity to attend all of these, please do so. This is kind of helping us, provide information to the field without having Okta. So at this point, I'm going to open it up for questions. I've had staff reviewing the questions on the back end and ready to start answering any.
Okay, we've gotten currently 5 questions. Becky Krantz did provide an answer as it relates to the Equity Ambassador Program, but I think we should read them in case anyone is on the phone who doesn't have access to see the published questions. So the first question that was asked was, how does a student completing 2 courses in multiple pathways affect their pathway of concentration?
Can you repeat that, Robert? Sorry.
Sure. How does a student completing 2 courses in multiple pathways affect their pathway of concentration?
So that's a really good question. Based on the feedback that we received from the Data and Accountability Work Group, districts still wanted to be able to self-report the concentrators like they have in the past. And so if a student has multiple programs of concentration, the district will have the opportunity to choose which one of those program of concentrations they choose to report from that standpoint.
Okay. Next question deals with the Equity Ambassador Program. Does each CTPD have to have an Equity Ambassador? Becky Krantz replied that the Equity Ambassador Program is voluntary, but it only benefits the districts to have a local equity lead, especially for the equity support needed for the CLNA. And she provided a link in her response for more information. And another question was, we never received the invite to nominate. Can you send this to the JVSD superintendents? So there's a link provided by Becky, but Lee, it's up to you if you want to send something else out to the superintendents.
Yeah, we definitely can follow up with more information on this equity piece to the JVSD superintendents. And I just want to echo what Becky wrote, is that yes, this is a voluntary program, but we do feel that based on the federal legislation, our strategic plan for education in the state of Ohio, and the work that has to be done within the comprehensive local needs assessment, that this Equity Ambassador Program and having an individual from each CTPD to kind of be the lead of equity within their CTPD and help train all staff, we think is really, really important from that standpoint, in that we have, invested dollars to be able to create this program to provide free resources to the districts.
Okay, the next question is, will point values for previously approved credentials be revisited?
So that's a really good question. I'm definitely, as we go through the review process and look at the credential applications on a quarterly basis, and as we begin to get this committee convened, we definitely will be looking at the credential point values. And I would say we would be looking at them in 2 ways. If there's any that would need increased, or if there's any that needs decreased, then it really would be driven based on data from the Burning Glass, as well as our involvement of the industry. And that's something that we do now on an ongoing basis.
Last question, which I believe the presentation covered. When can we anticipate to hear about the approval status of our secondary Perkins 5 plans?
So in relation to our state plan, it has been approved. I know that from the work that our AFS team has done with the comprehensive local needs assessment and the local application, all of the review of the initial comprehensive local needs assessments and applications have been done. Based on the data that I received the other day, I think there's 12 CTPDs where there was information sent back that we needed corrections or suggestion changes. And so the 12 that have not been approved is in the district or at the CTPD level for corrections. And we're turning those around. Once those come back to us corrected, we're getting those reviewed within that same week typically right now.
Okay, we have another question. When you said work-based learning will replace technical skill participation, does this mean that we will no longer be held accountable to making sure every student takes the web exam tests?
So that's a really good question, and I probably wasn't clear enough within that slide. Is that technical participation really, when you look at the technical skill attainment measure, is really included in that measure, because if you don't hit the benchmarks for testing students, you typically would get a grade demotion with technical skill attainment. And so that is why we are removing it from the QPR and basically adding work-based learning. So you still will be held accountable for technical skill participation, but the data is basically, the accountability part of it is part of the technical skill attainment. And that's how it is on the state report card.
Next question, can a CTPD have more than one person trained as an equity ambassador?
That's a really good question, and I am going to ask Becky Krantz to provide that reply in the chat function from that standpoint, because she's managing that program.
Okay, Leah, someone has requested that you repeat your response to the question of how does a student completing 2 courses and multiple pathways affect their pathway of concentration?
So that, I mean, basically it is what you have done up to this point. We had students in Perkins 4 have multiple pathways of concentration. So when it comes for final reporting of a student's program of concentration, just like they have had the ability to do under Perkins 4, the district has the opportunity to provide what they want the student's program of concentration to be from that standpoint.
Okay, next question. For the new graduation requirements, can you clarify and point us to where we can find the documentation that shows if it is the overall passage of the pathway web exam or the passage of 3 individual tests?
So we can follow up with a written email when we send we can send a communication out with the equity ambassador information, and we can include an update on grad requirements in there and provide the language of that it is the passage of the student's program of study from that standpoint.
Next question, are you looking into a way to report students in multiple pathways? When a student is passing in more than one pathway, we want them to be part of the QPR measure for each of those pathways.
So that's a really good question from that standpoint. And so what we're hoping to look into from the quality program review side is potentially looking at how we can provide course level data, especially in technical skill attainment. And so as we begin to work this fall with IT on building a data dashboard for the comprehensive local needs assessment, which a lot of that performance information is in section A of the comprehensive local needs assessment, that is on our radar of if we can provide the course, getting to the course level data drilled down to the pathway, that will, I think, provide the opportunity for you to be able to see and provide all of those students into the QPR. Those are things that we definitely have on our radar and we're looking forward to, or looking into. It gets a little bit more complicated with state the state level reporting and the federal reporting because of duplicated status.
Okay, as of now, we have no new questions submitted, so we are open to any additional questions you may have. We'll leave the live Q&A event open for a few more minutes. Leah, we had a question come in that
Yep.
Will the slide presentation be available to download?
So that's a really good question. And so basically we will look at the recording of this and determine if we're able to post this recording. And if not, we will definitely try to get the slide deck in a PDF and sent out from that standpoint.
Another question, does the capstone course count in concentrator status?
So the capstone course does count as part of concentrator status, and that was even in Perkins 4. We have never excluded the concentrator course in any data and accountability calculation from that standpoint. So part of that session that we will dive deeper into reviewing the program of study and the use of the capstone. We'll talk a little bit about the original intent and the use of the capstone and how to, just a refresher for everyone as with Perkins 5, it's really important that the capstone course was not designed to be a student's second course in a program of study. So we'll talk more about that, but yes, it is part of the concentrator status piece.
Will the opening video be released? I'm assuming you're referring to the welcome back video.
I guess we have not thought that far. I guess, is there a request for it? You can email our office and we can look into that.
Are we using course grades for web exams again, or the actual web exams?
So that's a really good question. As of right now, there has not been any state legislation that has actually been passed as an official bill and signed by the governor to waive any state assessments from that standpoint. There are definitely some bills that are proposed right now that do have some provisions in them that potentially would waive state assessments. I think it's important to note that Betsy DeVos from the USDOE sent a communication on behalf of the USDOE a couple weeks ago to all the state chiefs, basically communicating that the USDOE would not be entertaining waivers for state assessments this year. So I think there's a lot of conversation that probably is going to unpack depending on what school continues to look at from that standpoint. But I think as of right now, you need to plan for the students to take the actual online web exam, and the course grade is not an option unless something would change from a legislative standpoint.
Next question, does work-based learning to the quality program review mean each individual program is expected to meet a work-based learning benchmark every year, or its data will be read?
So the work-based learning piece is one that we are still, our federal indicator, when you review the data and accountability guidebook, you're going to see that the first set of data that we report to the feds in December of 2021, 12% is the threshold that we've set for the baseline for work-based learning. And so we hope to be able to simulate some data this fall on the 2020 grads to look at in the 2019 graduation cohort to kind of see where we are with work-based learning to determine, our next steps from that standpoint. But as of right now, it would be based on the graduation cohort, the cumulative average of those students, or the cumulative hours of those students over the course of their high school career. So it'd be very similar to what we have done with the graduation cohort and those type of things in terms of the threshold that needs to be met. So right now it would be 12% of your graduating cohort at the pathway level. But again, we are going to look at some data because I do think it gets a little bit more challenging to meet the thresholds based on the current pandemic for some pathways versus other pathways because of the interruption that the COVID has had on the industry. And so I think there's a lot for us to unpack in the next few months. Before and really to think about it, FY22 is the first data piece that we would actually for the QPR go back to removing the hold harmless. So we've got a little bit of time to unpack this from that standpoint, but know that we recognize the challenges on the pathway level from that standpoint, which there are some pathways where every student can get the 250 hours pretty easy, and then there's other pathways that definitely are challenging. So we'll definitely continue to monitor that.
Okay, next question. Do pathway electives count towards a student's concentrator status?
If the student is enrolled in a career technical education VT course that falls within the pathway that the student is taking its program of study, the answer would be yes. A student enrolled in any VT course is part of that student's pathway.
We had two questions. They're related. Is WebExam working on providing a remotely proctored testing option?
It's a really good question. Really, at last spring, we started to work with SEAT to look at what are some potentials for a remote web exam component. And at this point, based on the research and what we have from a test security standpoint, we will not be offering a remote location option for testing.
Okay, and this is going to be the last question for time. Is it permitted to take a web exam a year before the corresponding CTE course? If they pass, must they retake it again the year they take the CTE course? How does this impact CTAG credit?
So I think it's really important to remember, and especially with you, a student now, you're reporting those test scores on a yearly basis and those type of things, that the student really should not be taking an assessment prior to them being enrolled in the course and learning the material from that standpoint. As Robert said, that that is the last question that we're going to take for today, and I just want to thank everyone for jumping on to this update. From that standpoint, again, just to start, with to end where I started this presentation, I cannot thank you guys enough for the work that you are doing with students on a daily basis right now. I know that there are still so many challenges that you're facing getting kids in the classrooms, or even if you're still on remote instruction from that standpoint. And so, again, I know that there's probably ups and downs every day, but I just know, like when my daughter comes home from her hybrid school day, that she's excited to interact with her with her teachers from that standpoint, and just as happy to be back in the classroom. And so, again, I know that you guys are stepping up to the plate to do great things for the career technical education students in the state of Ohio. And please know that even though we are in this telework environment, we are, doing our best to ensure that you feel that you're being supported in the field during these times. And so please just know that our emails are always open from that standpoint. Please send us an email if there's things that you think that we can do to support you that we haven't done up to this point. Let us know. We're open to ideas. We work with the associations quite a bit on a weekly basis and that type of thing, and try to be as responsive as we can. But again, if there's things that you can think of, let us know. And just know that we're here to support you and keep up the great work for Ohio's career technical education students.